Hey, it's Dave. Welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about Tom Petty. It was a great loss that we had. That song was like the first song um, outside of the realm of when I first started playing guitar. I just wanted to learn Black Diamond by Kiss, and then I was on this kick of I just want to learn Zeppelin songs. And this was like the first, like, I wanted to branch out, and Tom Petty was like a new band. And I remember loving Breakdown, and at that point, I think the Hard Promises, I was going to say The Waiting, but Hard Promises album had just come out, and I loved that whole record. I loved Damn the Torpedoes, and that was kind of like, Damn the Torpedoes for me was when I first started listening to Tom Petty. I was probably, I want to say 11. And Refugee, Don't Do Me Like That, all those songs were great. And then I went back and heard songs like Listen to Her Heart, I Need to Know, American Girl, and Breakdown. And the one thing that I noticed about Damn the Torpedoes, I thought as an album, it was just a much better record than the earlier albums as far as it was like he hit his stride. I mean, every song on the record's great. Um, and then he came out with Hard Promises, and the same type of thing. It's like every song is great. It still had that flow. And, just like every other artist, the music starts to evolve. And then on the next record, um, he had that song that was an MTV hit, You Got Lucky. And even though it was kind of like a little bit more of a modern sound for him, I still felt like it was still Petty. And Change Your Heart is on that record, and that's also one of my favorite songs. But then the 80s crept in, and we kind of got Don't Come Around Here No More, and I know he did that with Dave Stewart is his name, I think, from the Eurythmics. And, there's like that whole vibe, and I thought that was still a great song. And, I should say, I love all his catalog. But what happened was, I think when he started doing like Free Falling and Last Dance with Mary Jane, that whole era, for me, was more like I could start to hear, and it might have been around the time when he did the Wilburys too. I think around that time, Tom was getting back to his roots, and he was working with Jeff Lynne, and he was working with George Harrison and the Wilburys and the Byrds, and you can definitely hear a lot of the Byrds influence start to come through. Now, I think that Tom always was influenced by Roger McGuinn and the Byrds. I just don't think it came across in the same vein of song. He was influenced, songs like The Waiting, that heavy 12 string. It's great, but you don't really hear it. Doesn't scream, this is a Byrd song. And I think as it got later, you could hear way more a direct influence. And, everybody goes through like some types of those phases of songwriting. You know, um, I brought up many different people before. I mean, you could listen to like, I think the Stones in the late 80s and into the 90s, other than Voodoo Lounge, which I think is a fantastic album. I think some of that stuff is just a little showing the guys out of touch, where a bigger bang came out and it was like, that's the Stones. There you go. Like, and I think with Petty, for me, I have a friend of mine, Greg, who loves like the late 80s, 90s stuff, and he's right. I mean, it's good. It's great stuff. For me, it just wasn't what turned me on to Tom in the first place, which was that like there was an edge to him, and that edge had an attitude, and even in his lyrics. I mean, when he wrote "Stop Dragging My Heart Around," in that lyric, it's like there's like an anger, a youthful punk kind of kid, but still under wraps. I mean, it's not like, and I just think like when he got older, for me the songs they were a little, storytellerish and whatnot, and they just weren't my huge cup of tea. But I think his band was a killer band. I mean Mike Campbell. I mean, let's not discard him as great guitar player. Mike's like reminds me of like a guy like Johnny Marr, where it's like, the average guy, average kid, 13, 14 years old, isn't listening to Mike Campbell sitting there going, oh, he's fast, he's that. That's not important. The songs, the playing the exact right thing, and him being like, I mean, just great stuff. I mean, even like the Boys of Summer by Don Henley, that was with Mike Campbell. He just plays the right things, and to me, that goes a much further along way than guys that rip and shred and can play all that stuff. Because, like I said, I grew up a shredder and I loved all that stuff. It was fun stuff. But, once you get like past a certain age, to me now it's more nostalgic. Like I'll listen to, like recently I was listening to the Michael Schenker group, the MSG album. And I love those songs. But would I listen to it if it came out today? I don't know. I would probably say no. But maybe that was a bad example because I do think Mike had like he was a real tasty player. I think he's overrated in the fact of, this is, again, I'm just going off on a tangent. I think Michael Schenk is completely overrated as a shredder player, but as a really just a talented, tasteful rock guy, I think he was great. But getting back to Petty, I mean, this is just devastating. I also saw in the news today that Miles Picaro, Jeff's second son, died at the age of 31, and I don't know why. I mean, when you think about Jeff Picaro, Jeff died when he was 38, I believe he was. I mean, and all the stuff he played was just outstanding. I mean, all that work he did and made it to only at 38 years old. It's pretty crazy. So I'll be looking to see what that is. But it was a crazy week because everything that happened, and then we find out that Tom Petty passed, and I don't think anyone was expecting it. Like I said, I was somewhat friendly with Scott Thurston, who was an avid guitar collector. He was a dear friend of one of my best friends, Mark Spiewak. And anybody in the Los Angeles area knows Mark Spiewak from West LA Music. He was an icon. In fact, when every time I say Tom Petty, I can just see Mark Spiewak in my head going like this. Because anytime when Scott started playing with Tom Petty's band, Mark used to hang out, and they would ask him to pick up a bass and jam, and Mark would be like, I was playing with Tom Petty last night. This close. Tom Petty. This close. That me and a bunch of my friends in LA, we had a joke. Anytime someone said, hey, you're going to go see Tom Petty tonight? We would always just do this for Tom Petty because it was a nod to Spiewak's enthusiasm of how excited he was that he got to meet and play with him. And Mark was a very funny guy. He was, I remember shortly before he passed, he had to deliver speakers to Ringo Starr's house, and he said he went over to Ringo's house, and he walked in and his jaw hit the floor. Paul McCartney and Joe Walsh are sitting on his sofa, and he's like, he was there for 2 hours just shooting the shit with them, and he was like he was like a kid in a candy store. And the funny thing is, this guy got gear to mostly everybody in LA. If somebody needed gear, they would call Mark. And Mark didn't even really work in recording. He didn't really know much about the gear. But he was such a customer service oriented type of guy where he was like, if there's something wrong, I'll run to you. I'll get, he was so, I'm going to take care of you, that he was the guy to get it from. And, so he was very good friends with Scott Thurston. They played in bands together. They had a band called, I don't know if Scott was in Jump, but he was in bands, may have been. He was in bands with Scott since the early 70s, and then of course Scott I think Scott was in Jump. And then they went and played Scott Thurston later played for the Stooges, I believe, and I think he told me once he played in the Motels too. A super nice guy. I mean, the whole crew, when Mark passed, a lot of the guys from Petty's band came out to give their condolences to this private party that they had for Mark. And we all got to play. And they're just all great guys. And that's pretty much telling of Tom because, who you hang around with and who you have around you is pretty telling of who you are. And there's a great video that Norm from Norman's Rare Guitars posts about Tom, about doing to the charity that Norm supports, and that Tom went out of his way. I mean, he's just, like I said, I think he was a great guy, and he totally will be missed. And he made some great music. But I'll say this. So, You know, some of I love like the old King's Road. I love there's some of those tracks that are just unheard. What I'd like you to do is if there's a track in the later half, like anything from like 86 or 87 on, like on the album like The Last DJ, but if there's a song on there that really hit you that was on a later thing, put it in the comments because I'd love to go listen to it and fish out some stuff that that I generally probably avoided. And it might be too bad because if there's a song that I can catch and go back to and rekindle, that would be something. And so if there's a song that you really did, please in the comments put it and let me know so I can give it a listen. But like I said, I'm a big Tom Petty fan, and this was a big blow. And he was one of my first bands, other than like Led Zeppelin, that I really wanted to learn some of the guitar parts just because I thought it was very musical. And Breakdown, what I played in the beginning, was always one of those ones as a kid. I'm like, oh, that's within reach. Let me learn that. You know what I also find funny is I always notice that guitar players, and this might be something ego-driven, if they listen to something that's out of their reach or out of their grasp, sometimes they're just like, oh, I don't like that. That's not good. Listen to Clapton. It's like, Clapton? What the hell are you talking about? You know, I think if something's out of reach or something, like, I mean, for me, Alan Holdsworth stuff is completely out of that's out of my pay grade. He's a monster. There's some stuff going on there. And as a listener, I love to listen to it. But it doesn't make me run to my guitar to try to learn it. Although I tried to learn, I did learn the Devil Take the Hindmost the other day. And I'm trying to get my hand to get back to normal because the stretchings that you have to do are just nuts. But to not recognize that Alan Holdsworth is like an unbelievable guitar player just because you don't like that style of music, to me comes across as being it's very like it's childish, and people should embrace like all kinds of music. And you know, not everything is great, but you know, there's value in a lot of things that I think people overlook. And it's too bad because, you know, what happens is then the person's gone and then people start to get turned on to this stuff, you know, like Stevie Ray, for instance. I'm not a huge blues guy, but Stevie was a great player. And probably had been more open as a younger guy, because I was in high school when that guy came out. And I just wasn't into blues. I still am not, but I probably would have been, had I had a more open mind, to been like, I gotta go at least see this guy play. And you know, the more stuff you bring to the table, the more you're gonna bring to your game as far as playing. And you know, I also think that Petty, if you ever seen Running Down the Dream, the documentary, it's 4 hours. I ended up catching it one night. It was like midnight, and it came on. I'm like, oh, this is perfect. I'll be asleep by 2. I didn't know it was 4 hours. So 3 hours in, I'm like, what the hell time is it? Like, Christ, this is getting too damn long. But it was great, and I think you really find that Tom was a great guy, and that he comes across as somebody that was looking out for people, and I think he was a great writer. And I think I don't care what anyone says, you could take the 2 albums, Damn the Torpedoes and Hard Promises, and listen to those albums back to back, and if anyone had that amount of good songs their whole career, they'd have been great. And that's just 2 albums from Tom. When I think the Heartbreakers did like 13 records or something like that. They did a crazy amount. But anyways, he will be missed. Very good.
You're right on target. You hit the nail right on the head with your comments, what you're saying today. You're right on the money, everything you said.